For this video, there's going to be sources in the comments. So if you would like to look at any of the research that I have taken a look at and gathered for the making of this video, they will be in the comments and they will be linked. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how we can fix the housing crisis. According to Harvard's 2025 State of the Nation's Housing Report, half of all U.S. renter households in 2023, about 22.6 million households, were cost burdened, spending at least 30% of their income on housing and utilities. A separate analysis from the National Low Income Housing Coalition finds that 3 out of 4 extremely low income renter households spend more than half of their income on rent, leaving very little for food, healthcare, and transportation. Realtor.com estimates that more than a decade of underbuilding has left the U.S. short roughly 3.8 million homes as of 2024, a gap they say would take about 7.5 years to close at current reconstruction rates. This combination of heavy cost burdens and a multi-million home shortage can lead to crowded living situations, delayed family formation, and long commutes that quietly reshape people's lives. The question is not whether housing is good or bad, but how this works under the hood and what it would actually take to fix it. Because apparently just wishing for affordable rent hasn't magically solved the problem yet. Maybe if we all chanted it a little bit louder at the landlord, we'd have a bigger apartment by now. Realtor.com's housing gap analysis notes that from about 2012 through 2024, home prices rose steadily while new construction consistently lagged behind household formation, tipping the market off balance. Who could have predicted that building homes slower than new households form would, in a shocking twist, make housing more expensive instead of cheaper? Their 2024 report concludes that even after home completions reached about 1.6 million, the highest level in nearly 2 decades, the country still faced a shortage of 3.8 million homes. In a system where there are millions fewer homes and households that want to form, landlords and sellers can raise prices because more renters compete for each available unit. This scarcity tends to reinforce itself. Realtors.com Let America Build campaign materials highlight that underbuilding over many years created a backlog of pent-up households, especially among millennials and Gen Z, who would form independent households if homes were more affordable. When construction finally ticks up, that hidden demand quickly fills the new units, so vacancy rates remain low and prices stay high instead of falling. You might notice this when every decent apartment listing in your area gets multiple applications on the first day, or when friends in their late 20s and 30s are still living with parents despite having full-time jobs. These are everyday signs of the scarcity engine that national supply gap numbers are describing. You know, the living the dream lifestyle where you pay half your salary for a student apartment that barely fits a bed. A second mechanism sits on local rules, zoning maps, height limits, minimum parking requirements, and slow approval processes. The Wharton School's research on the impact of zoning on housing affordability finds that in many high-demand metros, land use controls and large lot zoning help push prices far above construction costs by limiting how many homes can be built on valuable land. A National Association of Home Builders article on zoning and affordable housing similarly warns that low-density zoning and parking mandates often raise per unit costs and reduce the number of homes that can be added in desirable areas. The cause and effect chain often looks like this. Neighborhood groups worry about traffic, parking, or character, so they pressure local officials to keep densities low or to require large setbacks and parking minimums. Over time, those decisions make many small infill projects illegal or uneconomic. So fewer homes get built, even when the demand is strong. When supply is constrained, existing owners see their property values rise, which can make them more motivated to defend the same restrictive rules that created that scarcity. You might notice this when a modest duplex or small apartment proposal draws intense opposition in your town, even though similar buildings already exist from earlier decades. Or when you hear developers explain that by the time they buy land and meet local parking and design requirements, the only projects that pencil out are upscale buildings rather than middle income housing. Importantly, when rules are actually loosened, the system responds. A policy brief from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, summarizing research on less restrictive zoning regulations, finds that upzoning, allowing more homes on the same land, can increase housing supply over time, even if the immediate affordability gains are modest and often show up first for higher income renters. That suggests the rule maze is not abstract. Change the map, and the housing that appears on the ground eventually changes too. It's groundbreaking stuff, really. So, yes, if the city council discovers in 2026 that you can fit more than one house on a piece of land, that counts as a major innovation in our brave new world. So, if your city council ever decides to treat a zoning map like a regulatory document rather than a sacred skull, miracles might actually follow, like a second bathroom. Even when zoning allows building, the economics are shaped by a cost stack: land, labor, materials, financing, and ongoing expenses like insurance and taxes. Harvard's State of the Nation's Housing Report notes that the median asking rent for new apartments completed in late 2024 reached about $1,900 per month, which they estimate is only affordable to households earning at least $76,000 annually. The same report points out that insurance costs for many properties jumped by more than 20% in a single year, adding further pressure to operating budgets. The National Apartment Association and NAHB have both documented how higher land prices, stricter energy codes, and complex permitting can add thousands of dollars to the per unit cost of building, which then shows up in higher rents. A study in sustainability on green affordable housing finds that while energy efficient design can save tenants money over time, upfront costs and the need for incentives mean that without thoughtful policy, green standards can make initial project budgets higher. In this environment, lower rent units are the hardest to produce. So many developers focus on higher end projects where rents can cover the full cost stack. An article on the 2024 housing affordability crisis from the Apartment Owner Association of California highlights that rising operating costs and interest rates have led many owners to raise rents simply to stay afloat, especially in coastal markets. You might see this locally when most new buildings come with amenities like gyms or roof decks that help justify higher rent, while older, once affordable buildings are renovated and relisted at much higher prices after being acquired by new owners who definitely bought them for the community and not for the tax write-off. This system is not purely broken. It exists in part because housing policy is trying to solve several problems at once. NAHB's overview of zoning explains that early zoning aimed to separate homes from factories and other noisy or polluting uses, and that many modern codes still prioritize safety, light, and air as core values. The National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials notes that local governments also rely on property taxes and stable neighborhoods to fund schools and public services, which encourages caution about rapid change. Building codes and permitting, even when frustrating, are meant to keep structures safe in fires, storms, and earthquakes. On the economic side, limited supply and rising prices benefit existing homeowners who see their equity grow and gain a financial cushion for retirement or emergencies. Harvard's Housing Reports points out that new, higher quality construction has also improved energy efficiency and comfort for many households, and that owners of newer units often benefit from lower utility costs and more resilient buildings. In other words, the same mechanisms that make housing scarce and expensive can also protect health, wealth, and environmental performance when they are balanced well. The problem is that the balance has shifted. NLIHC's GAP research shows that the U.S. is short over 7 million affordable and available rentals for extremely low-income renters, and that 75% of those renters are severely cost-burdened. Harvard's report adds that the supply of low-cost units, under about $1,000 a month adjusted for inflation, fell by more than 30% between 2013 and 2023, even as higher-priced construction increased. Together with Realtors.com 3.8 million home shortage estimate, These findings paint a picture of a system that currently leads much more towards scarcity and exclusion than towards stability and access. Once you understand these concepts, you can start spotting them in your own town, where zoning quietly limits apartments, where cost stacks make only luxury projects viable, and where a long running supply gap keeps every for rent sign up only for a day. You cannot fix the whole national system alone, but you can support local zoning reforms, like allowing duplexes, small apartments, and accessory dwelling units in more neighborhoods that research suggests can gradually increase supply. You can back policies that lower unnecessary costs while keeping real safety standards. And you can vote for leaders who recognize that years of underbuilding and tight rules, not just individual choices, have created the shortage described by Harvard, NLIHC, Realtor.com, and housing researchers at places like Wharton. When you see the pattern clearly, you have more control over how you respond, whether that means how you vote, what you advocate for, or where you choose to live. And that awareness makes it easier to push the housing system in a better direction instead of feeling stuck inside of it. Because in the end, the best way to fix a decade-long housing crisis is, of course, one person casting one vote and quietly staring at Zillow listings like they're personally responsible for the entire rental market, scrolling past $2,500 studio apartments that still don't include a closet and force you to live with your neighbor Bob, who just floated his bathroom. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, and only if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps so much. I hope you come back to watch another video, and goodbye.